All right. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here and thank you for your interest in SBOMs and, in particular, the SBOM Harmonization Plugfest that we're about to kick off. I am Tovar from the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon, and today I'll be going over our plans for the SBOM Plugfest and seeking your feedback and any questions that you may have. Um, let's, I'll be going through a few slides to start with, and then there's plenty of time at the end for questions. I want to remind folks as you sign in, you've probably seen the notice that this session is being recorded. So just be aware of that. And this is the agenda for today's session. We've got, like I said, a few slides, probably take about 20 minutes to go through those. As we go through the information, if you do have any questions, please raise your hands and we will call on you to unmute, and then you can go ahead and ask your question. And then we would ask that you mute yourself after we've discussed your question. And please stay muted throughout the rest of the session. In terms of the agenda, we'll talk about the goal for the Plugfest, what the schedule is, what the software targets are that we've chosen for the Plugfest, the review criteria, what we're going to look at. Probably the most critical part of this is the instructions, the expectations, and how we want you to submit SBOMs that you produce. And then finally, we'll talk about the results, what we're planning to do. And like I said, we'll have some time at the end for any questions and answers. In terms of the goal for the Plugfest is to study and understand how various tools may generate different SBOMs for the same software. We really need your inputs. We encourage your participation. Without your inputs, we really won't have anything to study and we won't get very far. So we're hoping that you will decide to participate. We will be asking folks to submit at a minimum a couple of SBOMs. It'd be great if you can submit more. The more inputs we have, the better our chances of having interesting findings, right? We're hoping that with good findings, it will help harmonize the way that various vendors produce SBOMs, and hopefully that'll be an improved situation for the entire community. I want to say that this is not a competition. This is not a bake-off between different tools to see which ones are better. We're really just interested in the study of why are different results being produced, understanding what are the causes, and like I said, trying to bring some light into what is causing those differences. We want to discourage folks from using participation as a way of self-promoting the tools. We're happy to thank those that participate. but we do plan to release or to make the results anonymous in terms of which tools created which results. But we certainly encourage you all to participate and provide SBOM inputs. In terms of the schedule for the Plugfest, we're having this meeting today. This is officially the kickoff meeting. We're actually having two of these, one at 9 a.m. and one at 3 p.m. To cater to different time zones. We're going to ask for participants to submit SBOMs by December 10th. That's 3 weeks from today. Hopefully that is sufficient time to create, like I said, a minimum of 2 SBOMs to submit. We're planning on having a session much like this one in early to mid-January to provide the initial analysis results, what we're seeing at that point after having had a few weeks to look at what has been submitted and analyze it and see what are the commonalities and what are the differences, where are we seeing differences. So we'll plan to get back with participants in early January. That is going to be an invite-only event for folks that participate. And then we will provide a fuller analysis or report back to CISA, who is sponsoring this work in February. In terms of the software targets that we're asking folks to generate SBOMs from, we have selected 8 software packages for the Plugfest. We mostly selected these based on coverage of various software languages. We are open to feedback. If anyone has comments about, oh, I think this one language is missing, really ought to be represented. We're happy to take that kind of feedback. We're open to potentially adding 1 or 2 more. We don't want to have too many because then it spreads the potential inputs more broadly, and it doesn't give us as much density for any particular target to be able to compare against, right? Also, if you want to get this list, the list and the instructions have now been posted. You can see the link, which is basically our Plugfest homepage. You can see that at the bottom right of this screen. Okay. In terms of the review criteria, what we're looking for as we review the SBOM inputs and as we compare them against each other. 2 main criteria are completeness and accuracy. And you can see the completeness here. We're looking for breadth and depth of the content. What are all the dependencies? Are they all covered? As best we can tell. And in terms of accuracy, we're looking at things like, do they have version numbers included? Are those accurate? And we're using a baseline view that we're going to take based on using SIFT, Trivy, and Microsoft SBOM to sort of establish a baseline view of an SBOM. Other elements that we're looking at for provenance, pedigree, and integrity of the SBOM. Okay. Um, Here we're going to start going through the instructions for submission. And to start with, number one, participation is wide open. Anyone can feel free to submit, but we ask that those that are interested in submitting, please submit at least two SBOMs for any of the software targets that are provided. Again, the deadline is December 10th. If you are able and have time to create more than two, that would be great. We strongly encourage that. It'd be great if folks submitted four or five. We don't necessarily expect folks to submit SBOMs for each and every one of them, but again, that would be incredible. Um, we are looking for source and build SBOMs. So please submit source and build SBOMs. Again, minimum of two. In terms of number two, um, we're asking you to create a folder in the SBOM Plugfest directory, and we leave it up to you to secure it. If you want to leave that folder wide open so that um, anyone can review your SBOM, that's fine. It's completely up to you. If you want to secure the folder so that only you have read access to it, we will need you to also include us at SEI so that we can uh, go in and review it as well. Number three, we're providing a directory structure for how to store the files. And number four, we're asking that you submit the source and build or build SBOMs in either or both of two standards. And those standards are SPDX and Cyclone DX. And we're providing file naming conventions just to facilitate the exchange of the SBOMs and to help our understanding of them. Number five, you are free to enrich or enhance the SBOMs as you normally might. We leave that up to you. What we do ask is that if you do that, that you provide some information in a README file to help us understand the type of enrichment that you may have done. And that's covered in number seven. Number six, we're asking that when you submit the SBOMs, before submitting them, that you validate them to help us basically make the process more efficient, make sure that they are valid SBOMs, that they've been reviewed, and that they won't give us any problem when we try to look at them. So we're suggesting some potential tools to validate your SBOMs. And then number seven, the README file, asking that you provide and upload a README file into your folder to help us out as we review your inputs. That README file ought to include the following information, including your organization, a name of a POC, contact info, what tool and what version you've used to create the SBOM, the type of SBOM that you've generated, and also please tell us how you validated it. And then finally, any additional information that might be useful to us, the reviewers, as we analyze them and compare them. Finally, upload the SBOMs into your folder. And I think that's basically it. If you want to send us an email telling us that you've done that, great. But we will be tracking inputs closely. So that's not a full requirement, really. In terms of results, we will start reviewing the SBOMs probably as soon as we start getting them. If we have any problems with reviewing or understanding, we may need to reach back and we may need to collaborate a little bit in terms of making sure that everything is clear. And we're hoping that the information that results from the analysis will be useful to the entire community. Like I said, in early to mid-January, we will have an outbrief session where we will invite folks that participate to meet us, much like today. And we will seek to share what we've learned at that point, and we'll look for feedback and inputs on approaches for improved alignment in terms of generating SBOMs. And finally, we are planning to provide a full report back to CISA in the February 2025 timeline. Again, our plan is to anonymize the inputs. We're not going to list what tool provided which output or input, SBOM input. But we will be happy to thank all those that participated. I see a question from Ricardo. Are there specific CDX, SPDX format specs that we are looking for? I tell you what, we can put that out. We will specify which ones we're looking for. I don't have that right now, but we can get back to you with that. Okay. That's basically the content that we had to share. We just wanted to go over the expectations for the Plugfest. We are seeking your inputs and your involvement. And now we're open to any questions or any clarifications that folks may need. JSON is acceptable. Yeah, JSON's acceptable. I think we can share the slides. I can do that. I will say that I think all of this information is now posted. So it's all at the home page where we made the announcement for the SBOM Plugfest. So all of this info is out there. There's a question about, do we want vulnerability and license info? I think that'd be great. CISA has released the SBOM framing document. Will this be the baseline of minimum SBOM elements? And if so, yes, I think that makes sense in terms of using the framing document for the minimum baseline elements. But if somebody is not yet doing that, uh, we don't discourage them from still participating. For scanning binary builds, are you only requiring one architecture or multiple? Let me get back to you on that one. Are there any guidelines on the expected file size for the SBOM? I don't have any guidelines on that. Ricardo has a question. Please go ahead
Yeah,
and
yeah, I'll describe it. So I'm trying to understand your study a little bit more. Can you describe your evaluation criteria and how you plan to look at the baseline and compare the different SBOMs? What specific fields are you going to be evaluating?
So basically, we want to be able to compare different SBOM inputs. So these are just some of the primary criteria, some of the elements that we're going to be looking for as we do the comparisons. Um, Again, we're going to build a baseline view of the um, individual SBOMs for each of the target projects, uh, building them with SIFT, Trivy, and Microsoft SBOM. And then we will, like I said, these are the primary elements that we will look at, and we'll look to compare what the different inputs are from what people have provided. Um, I'm not sure that I can be much more specific than that, but to say that we're looking for what elements are the same, similar, the same, and what elements have significant differences.
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess is quality a variable in your analysis?
We'd have to define quality, and I think perhaps that would be closest in terms of accuracy. Um, are we seeing what we believe to be the right um, response or input in the various elements? Like, for example, we're aware that oftentimes version numbers may be a concern, and we've seen that those can be incorrect at times. So that's one thing we're going to be looking for.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I see a question from Alex Goodman.
Yeah. Yeah, it's specifically around the build artifact. So like for the source that you guys provided, Git commits for the source SBOM scans, which makes total sense. And my question is, well, for the build SBOMs, should we be using already distributed images or binaries, or should we be building it ourselves? And the reason for the question is, want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of like everyone using the same thing as input, or if that's intentionally not a restriction.
Um, Let me ask one of my colleagues, Sasank, can you respond to that question?
Yeah, happy to answer that. For the build SBOMs, the SBOMs should relate to the building at that commit instead of using a binary or a pre-distributed image. So for example, like building Gin at that specific commit or HTTPie, the CLI version, the CLI of that at the specific commits. I believe dependency track is at version as I got to pin the specific version. But building at those specific commits would be ideal for the build SBOMs.
Awesome. Is there any restrictions on like any build tweaks done? So for instance, like there's multiple ways to like build flags. Um, so Rust is a good example. Like you can build where you're incorporating like the Rust audit tool. So there's more information in that built binary, as opposed to say flags that would strip out like symbols, etc. Is there any restrictions around how something is built?
No, there are no restrictions to add to how you build it, as long as whenever you're submitting it in your README, please like add that information so that whenever we're going through our verification steps, we can do our best to replicate your process.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sasank, and thank you for the question, Alex. I see the next question from Alan. Surely everyone will be building with different tools, with different libraries. I expect that is an accurate statement. But again, we're providing links to the projects. So at least that part should be the same. Any other questions? Any restrictions on package scope?
I can chime in a little bit, if you like. I think I'm mostly just trying to understand, are we looking for completeness? Like there's oftentimes kind of philosophical questions when doing component analysis, opting towards completeness of all components being used, or completeness of components that are actively being used by that software application. And I'm kind of wondering where we're landing philosophically there.
That's a good question. I'm going to ask Sasank again.
No worries. That is a good question. For example, if you're building a source SBOM in this case, it would be ideal to include the dev and test dependencies that exist within that source for the source SBOM, for example. But then like a build SBOM, obviously those in a well-built case, you're not building the test suite and the test code into the binary. And so in that case, those dependencies would not be in that build SBOM. But for a source SBOM, yes, I would say include those dev and tests. Try to keep the scope as large as possible.
Got it. Okay. And sorry, you do raise one more question for me now. When we say a build SBOM, we're saying the compiled binary or the state of dependencies after building from source, which are slightly different.
Believe the build SBOM would be the SBOM made to describe the compiled binary.
Okay. Okay. So you're saying a binary decomposition. Okay. Interesting.
Sorry, this is Alan. I think we generally tend to use the term build SBOM as build time SBOM, which is to say an SBOM that is created during the build process as opposed to an analyzed SBOM.
Okay, that was my understanding as well. That is much more helpful as compared to the binary decomp. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? We've got this scheduled for an hour. We're happy to stay for an hour.
David, as folks are going through this exercise, can they reach out to you and the team for further clarification?
Absolutely. If you have questions, please feel free to send us questions, feedback at the email address here, info@sei.cmu.edu.
Great. And to give you one that you may not have prepped for, do you think we might be able to put an FAQ on the website as those questions come in? And the questions that are in the chat today, we can track them.
We'll be happy to do that. We are recording this session, and we'll be recording the next one. those should be up on YouTube in a matter of 1 or 2 days at most. But as Alan suggested, we can put up a page with just, the significant questions that came up after each session, so that you can just look at that if you're wondering what questions came up in the other session or you couldn't make the session. We'll put that up on the web page. I see a question for CISA. Would the research be made publicly available by CISA?
Yes, we are definitely going to try to make the basic results of this public. What that will look like will depend a little bit on our resources, as well as the resources of the brilliant team at SEI. Right, the goal is to sort of make sure this goes back out to the world. But I don't want to pre-commit to saying it will look exactly like this.
Thank you.
Is that sketchy enough for you, Dimitri?
No, not at all. Not at all. Just so we can all benefit from the result, right?
Exactly. We want to do that. But the other thing to flag for David, as David mentioned, is we don't want to presuppose that everyone wants to make everything public. And so that's also something you can flag in your README, is saying, feel free to use this as an example, or share it widely versus, hey, we'd rather not. So that way we can honor that. And as we get closer to publicizing analysis, we'll do some further outreach.
I have a question, maybe if we still have a moment.
Sure.
So my tool is not generating SBOMs from binaries or from source code. Would it be possible if I'll take the same tools that you are using for baseline and I run it through our tool, because our tool repairs and improves SBOMs? And I will submit these ones.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last part? Your tool?
Of course. So our tool is not generating SBOMs from source or binary, but it's capable of taking already existing SBOM at different level of quality and improve them significantly and enrich them with very useful data. So would it be okay if we will use the same baseline tools that you're using to generate SBOMs for these projects? So we'll start from the same starting point, and then we'll run them through our tool to get our generated enhanced SBOMs, and we'll submit these ones.
I personally don't have a problem with that. I think that'd be fine.
I think our goal is to understand how people are using automation. So as long as you're slotting in, right, this is here's a tool and then here's another tool, so that everything is being slotted in through an automated practice. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
I think that also applies to anyone else who's doing it, right? If there are if you want to sort of combine multiple tools, it's valuable.
Hi, this is Kelly Schwam with RunSafe. And first of all, I want to say thank you for doing this. This has been something I've been concerned with for a little while, specifically with C and C++ SBOMs and how they can differ substantially. I am a little concerned by your limitation of 2 SBOMs minimum, though. So, for example, we have a very tailored SBOM generator specifically for C and C++, and I would love to participate because I think C and C++ especially is going to be where these divergent results happen. And I'm concerned that some of those divergent results are going to be limited because there's only one project that is written in C and C++.
Okay. So is your recommendation or suggestion that there ought to be one more project? because the thought is if there's more projects, then the potential inputs also get spread out more, and then you've got less to compare against, right?
Mm-hmm. I think either having more than one project per language or allowing for one SBOM from an entity for at least these languages that tend to differ substantially, where the industry has not really decided on an approach.
So I heard Kelly say either have another project or drop the minimum down to one. Kelly, what I'm going to propose is that if you can sort of say, hey, here's another C or C++ project that brings something interesting and different to the table with respect to SBOM generation, send that to CISA and SEI. I can't promise anything, but I very much hear what you're saying. And, this is a priority. The focus of, languages that are used heavily in critical infrastructure are important to us. So could you think about saying, hey, if you could bring one other project, David's point that we don't want to overload the SEI team with analysis, but we can discuss this internally if you propose something in the next few days.
Okay, I can definitely do that. Thank you.
Okay. One thing that I think might help here as well is seeing the questions on the meeting chat is helpful in terms of capturing them. There was a question about, are there specific versions of the specs that you prefer or are willing to accept? And I think what we'll do with that question is we will capture that and we will answer it and we will add it to our project page so that we'll provide a specific answer to that. And we look to have that posted in the next day or two. The content, there's a question about getting a copy of the slide presentation. What I would say is that the content of the slides is currently on the project webpage, and I will look for the address, but I think everybody received that. So the content is already out there. We will look to also post the slides. Yeah, how do you know another question, how do you know what the ground truth is for each project? SIFT and Trivy and Microsoft SBOM often produce different results for the same target. What I would say is that we're going to use those to inform the analysis. I'm not necessarily going to say that those are the ground truth, but that will be a sort of baseline to compare against. And the Google, yeah, thank you. The participation instructions on the web page has the link to the Google Drive for folks to upload their SBOMs. Any other questions?
David, I don't want to take over this. It's your webinar, but to Anthony's question, I think the goal of this exercise is to be non-parametric, right? We are not assuming that anyone knows the pure truth. We're just trying to figure out the sources of divergent analysis.
That's well stated. Thank you. Yeah, the interesting thing to look at is the differences. So we're not necessarily saying this is ground truth. We're more interested in where are there differences and why. We will, there's a question in terms of versions of SPDX or Cyclone DX, any preferred, we will answer that on the Q&A page that we will have up by tomorrow. So that way everybody gets the same information.
I got a question. Do you have any guidance, David, for translating? Has there been any guidance? I haven't gone through the instructions here in have detail, but of converting commits on these repos to release artifacts, like the tooling that I'm working with produces SBOMs from binaries, so I have to go find some release artifact, and it's a little more ambiguous when I'm just working with repo commits as to which release artifact might correspond to a binary that represents now that source code. Is there any instructions or guidance on that?
I am going to ask my colleague Sasank to see if he can provide any.
Yeah, it would be helpful to have in the instructions there, just another column for if you are going to attempt to make an SBOM from a binary, here is the release artifact that we would like you to target that aka corresponds to this commit. Otherwise, you'll be at the mercy of whatever I pick, right? And you may have discrepancy in SBOMs because I've just picked some binary from some package manager that maybe is built a little different from the source code. I don't know. I haven't gone through these repos, but
yeah, to your question, so for each of the repositories at those commits, you'll be able to build the either the executable or the Docker image, whatever is the actual end output of each repository, and you'll be able to use that for your tool since it builds on binaries. And so that's what we're trying to pin everyone to use the same exact version. And so by pinning by either commit or for a dependency track, we pin by one of the later versions that have just been released. So you should be able to, using the repository and the information in the repository, build. And then if you make any changes while building the artifact, please detail that in the README as part of your submission.
we will. I'll look into that, but that is not necessarily ideal for us to all your binary SBOM producers. Now you're asking them to build, each of you guys go build this source code. You're going to, like you said, you're relying on us to relay you our steps. You're going to get variability in there. And you're putting that load now on us to build a bunch of projects, create SBOMs on the things we built. I would have expected that this project would have presented us already with the built objects and said, hey, go run with this so that you're not, introducing variability.
The goal is to understand also the SBOM building process. So in this, by having you build your SBOM and also going from source or at build time, understanding what exactly is your process for building the SBOM. It's a study of not only what the SBOM output is, but also how people are building SBOMs. That is something that is not quite clear across the community and standardized yet. And so it's a study of these kind of two different tracks, if you might. So we understand that it poses an additional challenge, but it does give us valuable information in this study.
Thank you for the feedback, though. Any other questions?
Hi there, my name's Brad. I've got a question. I mean, one of the major things it kind of sounds like CISA wants to get is understanding maybe some of the techniques that companies are taking. And I think what might end up happening is a lot of companies are going to be reluctant to share that information. It's going to be kind of their secret sauce. on how they're actually, indicating on some of these components. I think the second part is a lot of the divergence that I think the industry is seeing is because the demand to produce SBOMs is less on the source code and more on, at least with my customers, it's more on executables. It's your finished product that they want to know what's in it because the vendor doesn't provide that information. I'm wondering if that's what CISA is seeing or others are seeing when it comes to divergence in SBOM results, is the kind of turning the hamburger back into the cow, so to speak, doing it from the build.
I don't want to speak for CISA. I think we're interested in all elements of where there is divergence, and if that is what ends up being the results of the analysis, I think we'll point that out, and we'll try to understand as best we can why there's divergence. And if folks aren't willing to collaborate in terms of understanding, we'll have to deal with that. Alan?
So I think our top level mission is sort of, again, as David said, understand the divergence. The easiest place to start on that is the more direct source or build time generation. The binary analysis model, we totally understand, is an important part of the ecosystem, is something that is strongly demanded, but also does involve more degrees of freedom in terms of measurement, right? Because I hope you don't, not mischaracterizing to say that it is inherently heuristic. That said, if folks on this call who are interested in participating from a binary analysis perspective have anything that they can suggest to us, please send David an email. You can CC us at CISA, ideally sooner rather than later, and we'll see if there's anything we can add that can sort of make sure that we're including you in this exercise, and also producing output that will benefit the market for this without adding too much complexity to the exercise. We're trying to keep things as simple as possible to get the most value and scientific legitimacy out of the findings. But I've heard both you and a couple other people sort of flag the binary analysis piece, and want to see if it's possible, if we can accommodate that in this sort of short time frame. We'll see what we can do.
Understood. Thanks.
Plus,
Thank
it's
you.
SCI that's doing the actual work, so we'll make sure that they have graciously agreed to do a decent amount of analysis over the holidays, which we are grateful for, so that we can actually do a quick turn on this exercise.
Thank you. Any other questions? I want to note again, if you do have any other questions or feedback, please feel free to email us. I've got the email posted here, info@sei.cmu.edu. We'll be happy to take those, and I promise we will respond back quickly. Again, I want to thank you. I want to encourage your participation. We're looking forward to doing this, and we're looking forward to getting your inputs. Again, feel free to email us if you have any other comments or questions. Thank you very much.